Hello everybody, what is up?
Hey guys.
Turn this music down a little bit. Mic check 1 2. Can you hear us okay? Can everybody hear us alright?
Give us a thumbs up.
Let us know.
If you can hear us.
Yeah. We'll wait, maybe start with some announcements while people are filing in. So this stream tonight is going to detail just covering breathing as a strategy for good health and well-being, and we'll go over some different breathing techniques, some more related to yoga and pranayama, and we'll touch base a little bit on a couple other breathing methods that aren't exactly related to yoga, but still within the same vein, so to speak. Also, we have a couple of classes in our back pocket for you guys. Krista did a yoga flow more geared towards beginner yogis. But of course, you can always increase the intensity, the challenge. You can always up the ante, if that's what you want to do for yourselves. And I did another mobility flow type class, similar to the hip mobility one, but this next one's going to focus more on shoulders and spine specifically.
And then our plan is for the next 2 classes that we film, we're each going to film a flow class, and then I'll be doing a yin class because I've been getting a lot of requests for that, and I'm like 98% done my yin training, so once I get all that done, then I'll film a class for you guys to put up here.
Yeah. So we can start with a few memes. So this one that's up right now that you see, I saw that Wim Hof, the Iceman, posted this one today, so I kind of commandeered it. But yeah, your breath is your superpower. Don't forget to use it. Let's see what else we got. Oh yeah, this is pretty funny. I thought this was also pretty relevant to the times, considering we're not allowed to do most of our hobbies. I like to play hockey. I started getting into jiu-jitsu a little bit, and of course just like hitting the gym, training, the sauna cold shower ritual. Not allowed to do any of that stuff temporarily.
But your breathing game has been on point. You've been doing it like every day.
Yeah, my breath work has been good because I have all the time in the world. So yeah, so when people ask, oh, what are some of your hobbies? Breathing is fun. What else we got? This one is good for the stream as well. Because people like people need to hear it from the lab coats to believe it. So new study shows that breathing air is linked to staying alive. And then speaking of breath work that I've been doing pretty much every day, or as much as I can, weather depending, but because I kind of like to lay out in the sun while I do it. But I've been on point with my Wim Hof Method. This is the face you make when you discover the Wim Hof Method, my friends. Breath of life. Take it in deep. Oh
yeah, we actually just both got an email today from Good Life. They're in the phase of planning their reopening, but basically saying that it might happen like province by province or city by city or something. And there's going to be a lot of like new regulations that might come into play in the opening, which
yeah. So probably similar to what was kind of going on before they closed, where they were kind of like limiting class sizes, smaller capacity for classes, that kind of stuff. And then, I don't know, they're talking about social distancing and wearing masks and yada yada. You know, all of these guidelines that there's absolutely no actual evidence to support does anything, but I digress. So I guess we can start now. So when we start getting into this information about the breath, since you guys have practice in it, if you do practice the Wim Hof Method, or if anybody who's watching is like a yoga instructor and knows their way around pranayama, feel free to contribute into the chat, because we'll be like checking in with it, and we want to encourage discussion, in the chat, and would love to hear, you know, some of your insights and your perspectives as well. So we can begin. So as it pertains to our breathing, you know, it can be argued that breathing, or the process of breathing, is one of the most, if not the most important process of the body. You know, our breath, or the breathing process, impacts every cell in our body. And in our yoga philosophy, the breath is said to be the primary conduit for prana into our being. So this idea of prana in yogic terms equates loosely to the life force energy. So that is omnipresent in existence. It's also referred to as chi in some cultures, or Tao in other cultures or traditions. And the breath is the primary means through which we bring this life force into our bodies. So aside from the food that we eat and the water we drink to fuel ourselves. But oftentimes, you know, we overlook the breath, or we forget about it throughout the day, because it's so automatic and constant. It keeps going whether we are aware of it or not. So we understand the importance of our diet and the impact it has on our health and our well-being, much like movement and exercise. Our bodies will adapt to specific inputs, or your body adapts to what you feed it, loosely. So we pay attention to the food that we eat, we pay attention to the water we drink, as we understand its influence on our health, our well-being, also our athletic performance and our energy levels. But for some reason, we don't place much of an emphasis on our breathing habits. Or maybe we just don't realize the full scope of its significance, and that healthy breathing habits are just as, if not more important than our dietary habits. So, go for it, address it, yeah.
Alright, so Darren says, can you tell us what got you so interested in all this, from the both of you?
Sure. So growing up, I've always been very athletic. You know, I played sports my whole life. So the story goes, my mom told me that when I was a baby, even before I could walk, she had me in the pool swimming. So I always had a very good movement base and sort of like motor skill kind of development. I was skating at 3 years old and playing organized hockey at 4. So, you know, physical activity is like deeply ingrained in my life. Growing up, I dealt with asthma. I developed asthma as a kid, and it was always triggered by physical exertion, and especially cold air. So when I would play hockey especially, I would take maybe one shift and my throat would just close up. So I was really dependent on inhalers for a large portion of my life, probably right until like my mid-20s, I would say. And when I started getting into working out, training, and then later on yoga, I was able to wean myself off that medication. I'm no longer dependent on it, and I haven't touched an asthma inhaler in probably over a decade now, which is pretty cool. And yoga specifically I got into because I was training a lot, doing a lot of strength and conditioning, not having the balance of mobility work in my life, and I ended up hurting my low back, compressing a disc, just lifting too heavy, too much too soon perhaps. But so yoga, actually, I cut the gym out, cut out weightlifting, cut out my strength training, and I did only hot yoga, maybe like 4 or 5 times a week. And after about a month and a half to 2 months, like my sciatic nerve pain and my low back pain that I was dealing with had sort of cleared itself up. So that's like how I got into yoga specifically. Breath work comes along with that, and I noticed the benefits in the strength of my lungs, my lung capacity, and then of course my cardiovascular health.
And then lately you've been really diving into Wim Hof in the last few years.
Yeah, I've been diving into the Wim Hof Method over the past 3 years. I did his 10-week online course. I did his workshop and got to meet him when he was in Toronto a few years ago. And I noticed a difference in my body in terms of my resistance to cold, where, when I first started it, I still could not stand the cold. My cold showers were not really super cold. If I was outside in the winter, I would still need like a coat. And now 3 years on, I can go outside in the dead of winter and shovel the driveway in shorts, no shirt, and like a toque and maybe some mittens, and regular ass shoes. So that's like a huge change. I love the ice bath now, and that's part of my sauna ritual as well, is hot sauna, ice cold showers, and I kind of go back and forth for a nice like flush of my vascular system.
And then for myself, so I grew up with asthma. I had a puffer, like kind of on and off, mostly to do with allergies, or if I was sick, it tended to be always respiratory. And then I kind of went away, and then in my early 20s, it started to come back again. And it wasn't until I actually started practicing yoga that I was actually kind of able to help with some of the symptoms of asthma, whether it be like allergy related or whatnot. And then actually a few years ago, I was dealing with a lot of allergy issues. My body was kind of like reacting to weird things, like different vegetables and stuff like that, which it was just basically like my body was always in that like kind of histamine state, and it just thought everything was an allergen. So I was reading a lot into, or I heard a lot about the Buteyko method, and different breathing practices in general that kind of helped to heal, that people were able to heal themselves of asthma and of like different allergies and stuff through a proper breathing practice, because if you're not breathing properly, it can lead to other issues in the body. So
and we'll get into all that.
Yeah, we'll get into more of that. And so then when we moved in together, both of us had cats, and I'm allergic to cats.
Me too.
And so my allergies like started acting up a little bit more. I had to start going back on my puffer and that sort of thing. And it was through those breathing practices that I was actually now if I feel like an asthma attack or something coming on, I can actually do these breathing exercises to ease myself out of it as opposed to taking a puffer. So yeah, it's just becoming very in tune and being very aware of your breath.
It's powerful.
And then also to do with injury. So I injured my neck quite a few years ago. I've had issues with it like for many years, on and off. And it wasn't until my teacher training that we talked about how improper breathing and or if your breath isn't, if you kind of focus and direct your breath on a specific area, you can actually help to heal that area. So I kind of applied that in my practice a lot, where I kept thinking of, okay, breathing properly, but really thinking of sending that breath into my neck. And it wasn't until I really started doing that I saw benefits through that as well, where I've been symptom-free for almost a year and a half-ish now. So yeah, that's kind of my story of how the breath has kind of always kind of come into my life and has been really important. I've tried the Wim Hof Method, and we'll kind of get into it once we get into those practices.
Yeah.
Because there's different practices can just feel different for different people. So like the Wim Hof for me, just because I feel like when I do it, it feels like I'm almost bringing on the asthma attack. Whereas something more calmer like the Protego method is good for, has been shown to be good for asthma. But now that I've kind of mastered that, now it's like, okay, well, to really strengthen my lungs, now I can kind of incorporate different breathing methods and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, so it just kind of goes to show how powerful your breath can be for these types of things. So consider, I've said this before in class as like an opening intention, but consider that a human being can survive for weeks without food and even days without water, but we can only survive minutes, if you're lucky, without air. So the breath of life influences literally every aspect of our health, and its influence permeates down to the cellular level or to our spirit. And maybe you're not the spiritual type, that's okay, but I find it interesting that historically, philosophically, the breath has been intrinsically linked to the idea of spirit. So here's an interesting insight that I got from this channel that I follow on YouTube called Truth Stream Media. Now they were just doing like a basic breakdown of a movie that was released last summer called Midsommar, and I recommend that if you're like a horror movie kind of a person. It's pretty interesting. But even the term spirit, they were looking this up in their old dictionaries that they have. And the term spirit comes from the root word spire, or in Latin spiritus, or spira, or spirare, if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm probably butchering it, but which means to breathe or to blow. So breath, or the act of breathing, is seen as, or was seen as, the process of keeping the spirit alive. And the spirit being that animating force in all living things. So spirit, and is the root word, aka spire, for most of our terminology surrounding breath or breathing. So we have, as examples, to inspire, we have, or inspiration, we have to expire or expiration. We have to perspire, to aspire, respire, conspire. So there's tons of it that link back to the spirit. You look at inspiration, or to inspire, and the definition is to infuse the mind to communicate to the spirit or to convey as by a divine or supernatural influence. Expire or expiration, we know is to exhale, but also relates to the concept of to cease or to terminate. So we kind of have the other side of the coin where it's a concept relating to death. To perspire, we understand this because we sweat when we do hot yoga or when we hit the sauna or when we work out hard, we start to perspire, which actually means to breathe everywhere, i.e. your skin is an organ that is sort of porous and breathes. So your skin actually acts as a bridge to your external environment and not a barrier, which is interesting as well. We have to aspire, which is to seek or to desire with eagerness or to attain. Aspirate, which is a sound consisting of or characterized by the breath, as in the sound of H, like that. We have to respire, which is a direct relation to the concept of our respiratory system, which is to inhale, exhale successively. Or to conspire, this is an interesting one, because the term conspire is usually equated with the term conspiracy, which is a loaded term as well, and usually it's used to try and discredit people who have any kind of alternative information to things. But when you look at the actual definition of conspire, it literally means to breathe or to blow together, to breathe as one or to harmonize. So in our yoga practice, in our classes, as a group, we're actually conspiring together. We breathe and move together in harmony, both on an individual level, in terms of you're harmonizing your breath and your movement together, but also as a collective, as in everyone in the class. So yeah, it's interesting. So with all these root words, or this root word of spire connected to all things dealing with breath, we are spirited beings. And the breathing, as we know, is the necessary process to maintain that spirit or to maintain the life force of the organism of the individual. The breather is defined by one who lives or one who animates or inspires. So this is all related to spirit in terms of the dictionary definition and the philosophical and symbolic underpinnings of this internal process. So the spirit is the breath, and by definition relates not only to the soul, but to how the breath was even defined or said to be the life gift of deity or the Holy Spirit. We know our breath sustains us, sustains life in every moment, and it influences our health on every level, from physical performance to organ function, right down to cellular function. And we even develop a relationship with our external environment through our breathing that becomes transactional or reciprocal. So we expire CO2, carbon dioxide, which is nourishment for plant life. Those plants take in that CO2 and pump more O2 or more oxygen into our environment, which we need to live and to thrive. So it's interesting that our breathing actually gives us that reciprocal sort of relationship with our environment and other living things, at least in particular vegetation. So CO2 is not a dangerous greenhouse gas, so to speak. It's actually required. More CO2 in our atmosphere equals more nourishment for all vegetation, which is why greenhouse growers will use like CO2 canisters, and they'll pump the greenhouse full of CO2 in order to yield larger, healthier, and hardier crops. So this is just a good example of a microcosm of the greater multiplicity of purpose that is existence and creation. It's real interesting to think about. As we know through our direct experience, if you practice yoga with us, or if you do any other kind of meditation or breathing practice, the breath is fundamental to our practice. Without the breath, there is no yoga, my teacher in Israel used to say. In yoga, breathing practices are known as pranayama. Breath work can have a direct influence over our various internal systems. So some of you guys know this in your practice, that when we ramp up intensity in class, and then we come to like a resting position, like a child's pose or even a shavasana, that by tuning into and controlling our breath and the quality of our cycles of breath, we're able to influence our nervous system. Getting into some other breathing practices later on in the stream, we'll also touch briefly upon how that can also influence our immune or defense systems, our endocrine system, our lymphatic system, our organ systems. So that influence is relative to how we breathe, the quality of our breath, and believe it or not, there is actually a proper or improper way to breathe in terms of our daily at-rest natural breathing state. So proper breathing mechanics actually matter as it pertains to proper oxygenation of our tissues and our cells. And the more oxygen there is in our system that's readily available, the better things are going to function. So what would improper breathing mechanics look like, Krista?
So I'm going to talk about 4 different kind of improper breathing mechanics. And the first one I'll touch on is called reverse breathing. So it's literally the opposite of what a healthy breather does. So with reverse breathing, as you breathe in, the abdomen will pull in, and then as you exhale, the belly will push out. This also causes the diaphragm to not work properly and can lead to permanent damage of the diaphragm. And even if you just try this right now, like it might feel like, if you're not used to breathing in that way, it's going to feel really weird and uncomfortable. So an individual will not be able to take, you might not be able to take a full deep breath if you tend to breathe this way in your daily life. And the breathing muscles can also become very weak and can cause a lot of confusion in the mind as well as the body.
Starts in the mind, finishes physically in the body, right?
Yeah. So the first part to reverse this would be to just simply become aware of it. For all these kind of improper breathing, is the most important thing is to really starting to pay attention to your breath, how you breathe throughout your day, and to check in with your breath and notice how it moves.
Just becoming more consciously aware of it.
Yeah, so a simple exercise you can do now is just place one hand on the heart, one hand on the belly, and simply just breathe normally. You can also look in a mirror, and just simply watch your chest or your abdomen or whatever moves. Just see what is moving in your body as you breathe, and this will kind of give you an indication if you're breathing right. And we will touch on what a proper breathing is at the end of this. So another good way to kind of a good little practice to kind of help reverse this, if you notice that you're doing it throughout your day, is cat-cow, which we do in class a lot. So that's why you always hear us cue cow pose, where you lift the chest and you lift the tailbone on the inhale, and then on the exhale we round the spine, coming into our cat pose on the exhalation. So this is done. This is done because in cow pose, as you breathe in, the belly kind of naturally drops towards the floor. And then as you exhale, the belly will pull in as you find your cat pose. So it's actually forcing you and your diaphragm and your body to move in the right way. So our second improper breathing would be chest breathing.
Breathing dysfunction?
Yes.
That's probably the proper good term to use.
Breathing dysfunction. Oh, and another thing with reverse breathing too, it's considered an improper breathing technique, but there is a breathing practice where you implement reverse breathing as a practice.
Yeah, we can talk about that later.
But yeah, don't worry about that for now. We'll just, for today, we're gonna call it as an improper breathing method. So for chest breathing, it's exactly what it sounds like. If you were to observe yourself or someone else breathe, essentially only their chest will move. So basically anything from like the bottom of the ribs up to the neck. Like that's kind of the only part that you would see move. There is a good chance that is a good chance that they are chest breathers. So in chest breathing, the secondary breathing muscles are being overworked. So one may experience lots of pain in the upper body, especially in the shoulders and the neck area, because like I kind of mentioned in my story, is that if you're kind of only breathing in like specific areas of the body, then other areas of the body can become tight, and you can feel a lot of tension in the muscles because the muscles aren't getting the proper oxygen that they need. And the organs, so if you're only breathing through your chest, the organs in the lower body are not getting worked or massaged. So deep breaths should happen in the belly first. And if they don't, it has been shown to be linked to increase of blood pressure and heart disease. Also, tighter clothes can also restrict our breathing. So if you're wearing a lot of tight clothing around the abdomen, this can cause you, or if you tend to like suck in your stomach a lot, then essentially it'll force you to only breathe through your chest.
Yeah, because you're constricted basically.
Yeah, so...
I mean, fellas, I'm sure you're not wearing like a corset or anything, so maybe it's not really a breathing dysfunction that, at least for tight-fitting clothing, probably not a breathing dysfunction that affects males as much. So a good way, or a good exercise for chest breathers is the breath of fire, which we'll get into a little bit later. So for our next one, it is collapsed breathing. So for individuals who are collapsed breathers, it has been correlated with people living inside their heads, having issues with body image, not caring about their body, often maybe trauma associated. So people who tend to breathe this way may be very closed off in the upper body, tending to have their shoulders very rounded. If you sit at a desk a lot, work in an office,
and any poses that require an opening through the chest, such as back bends in yoga, it can feel very scary for someone, or it's physically hard for them to open up because all the muscles here get so tight, they're unable to actually open up.
My uncle is a good example of that, because he's, a career roofer, and this also speaks to how the environment that we live can actually cause physical deformations in our body, because as we said, your body adapts to whatever you feed it. So in his case, he's had he's like 70 now, but he's had decades worth of being on a roof, working bent over like this, give you a side view, to now he's literally physically stuck like that, where if he tries to open up, his body physically cannot do it. And it becomes very painful and well, not very pleasant, but it makes sense because, you know, he's from decades and decades and decades of constantly being shoulders rounded forward because he's working in front of himself like this. That's what he's solidified within his physiology, within the physical structure of his tissues.
Mm-hmm. So a good way to kind of help reverse this type of breathing would be a supported fish or supported fish. So essentially you can use blocks, a blanket, pillows, whatever, and essentially you just lay down and just you lay down on the pillows or the blocks, and then you open up the arms, and it just causes a nice big stretch along the front of the body.
We've done this too sometimes in class. You know, when I guide a supported fish pose where we take our yoga blocks, one between the shoulder blades and then one to support the back of the head and neck. So that's probably how you guys know of it, of the supported fish pose, so to speak. And
then, of course, if it's any traumas related, then covering up with a blanket can feel very calming and relaxing, because this pose tends to be very vulnerable for some people. It can be very scary to be very opened up like that. So, yeah. Whenever
your system starts to feel like it's in a vulnerable position, it's going to react in terms of self-defense or self-preservation. So it's interesting that the blanket can bring back that sense of calm, you know? Your blankies.
So our next one will be frozen breathing. So in people who are frozen breathers, essentially nothing is really moving in the body, or very minimally. So maybe not those who practice Wim Hof, but think of walking into a cold room and having your breath taken away. That's essentially
no pun intended.
Yeah, that's essentially what frozen breathing is. It's almost like your breath is like taken from you. So if you just think about it, have you ever paused and brought your attention to your breath and then realized that you were just holding your breath? So this happens to me a lot at work, or I don't know, sometimes if I'm going throughout my day, especially if you're dealing with stress or even exercise. This can happen as well if you're not breathing proper through exercise and you're tending to hold your breaths through certain things. This is essentially frozen breathing. So even if you are a healthy breather, or you breathe somewhat normally through your day, you can still have spells of frozen breathing from time to time. And the outer body tends to be very tight, feelings of being very fearful and not being good enough. So that's kind of the connection to our emotional body. So to reverse this breathing pattern is to simply just become aware of your breath. Again, common theme throughout these 4 improper breathing mechanics is to really become aware of the breath and learn. And for this one specifically, learning a very calming breathing technique can help you in times of stress. So Vrti breathing, it's VRTTI breathing. It's a pranayama technique. We will be going over what that is a little bit later.
And you guys know Ujjayi breath from your yoga practice as well, which can also help to reduce stress and calm the nervous system. So, you know, you always have that one in your back pocket as well, that you can implement throughout your day, really.
Yeah. So what does proper breathing mechanics look like? So to practice breathing, your posture and alignment in the body is really important. So if you are seated right now, just notice the way you're sitting. Are you sitting cross-legged? Are you kind of slouching? Are you sitting against something? Just notice your body positioning.
Oh, are you feet up? Oh, and relaxed.
So if you are seated, notice the way you're sitting. And a good one, ideally you want to have a nice long spine. So I like to sit cross-legged. Sitting up against a wall is really helpful. You want to make sure that you kind of have that anterior tilt of the pelvis, so your pelvis is kind of tilting forwards, like you're poking your bum out behind you. This helps to align the spine, vertebrae by vertebrae. And then think of stacking the shoulders over the hips and then the ears over the shoulders. And ideally, this is a really good way to kind of, like our body is set up in alignment so that it allows our breathing mechanics to work better. So another option again is to lean against the wall or to lay down. So as you breathe, just take a moment to kind of notice what's happening in the body. And as you...
Okay, see you, Bobby.
See ya.
Thanks for popping in.
So as you breathe in, you want to feel your belly rise. So if you place one hand on your belly, one hand on your heart.
Not COVID. Continue.
As you breathe in, you want to feel your belly rise and push against your hand. And on that exhalation, you want to feel your belly fall away from your hand. And then for a deeper inhale, the belly will rise, and then the ribs will expand, and then the chest. And then on the exhale, the chest will deflate, then the ribs, followed by the belly. And you hear us probably cueing this a lot in classes. Essentially, this is proper breathing mechanics. So by practicing this more often, then the more often you'll kind of be doing this naturally throughout your day-to-day.
You start to ingrain it, just like any other movement pattern. It's that muscle memory starts to set in.
Mm-hmm. And so what's happening with the diaphragm is when you inhale, the muscles around your diaphragm contract, and then it pushes the diaphragm down, allowing the ribs and the sternum to expand. And with the exhale, the muscles...
Yeah.
Okay.
Do your exhale, the muscles...
And with the exhale, the muscles surrounding your diaphragm relax, and then the diaphragm kind of goes back into its position, and then the ribs can lower as well as the sternum. And then one general rule for any kind of breathing practice or pranayama practice is to never let your breathing practice cause you anxiety or lightheadedness or faintness, unless it's there's very specific rules for that breathing exercise.
Don't forget, your breath is your superpower. Breathing is your superpower.
Yeah.
Don't forget to use it. I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to leave that one there. It's a good reminder. Okay, so natural breathing while at rest we'll talk about. So when you're at rest, obviously, you should breathe through your nose. So I think I mentioned this as like a kind of a joke in class. The nose is for breathing. The mouth is for eating. So, so we want to breathe through the nose as much as we can. There are reasons for that. Your nose will moisten and warm and filter the air that's coming in. It helps to maintain your body temperature. And even in exercise, during exertion, we should try to maintain breathing through the nose. So if you're doing your cardio, if you're doing your workout, and you start to really ramp it up, the moment you start to notice yourself breathing excessively through your mouth, that's an indication to try and slow down a little bit, scale it back, and try to reestablish that steady in and out breath through the nose. Or, in through the nose, exhale through the mouth is not a big deal. Or even if you are like running or doing sprints or what have you, even the occasional breath in through the mouth just to bring more air in is not necessarily bad. But you just want to try to maintain that steady cycle in and out through the nose, ideally. This helps to keep your nervous system calm. So when we're really upping the stress factor in our workouts, and it's positive stress, but being able to breathe through the nose will help to keep the nervous system calm. So again, you guys probably have a lot of experience with this in the hot room, that you find that with the heat, it's very, very important to keep the breath steady to sort of influence how your nervous system is responding to the intensity of the exercise within that extreme environmental condition. This engages the parasympathetic nervous system, and it also will help to reduce hypertension and stress. Breathing through the nose also promotes the body's natural production of nitric oxide, which increases vasodilation, which then will increase the surface area of the alveoli in the lungs. So those are like the little air sacs within the lungs, like deep in the lungs. So when those are, the surface area of those are increased, then you're increasing your oxygen absorption, essentially. Also, oxygen extraction is highest during the exhale. So nasal breathing naturally creates a back pressure to increase O2 uptake by naturally elongating the exhales. So why not mouth breathing, Krista? Why not? Nobody wants to be a mouth breather.
Well, so breathing through the mouth only for short durations to reduce oxygen deficiency. So while running, exercising, you may need to open the mouth to take larger gulps of air, but with proper training of the breath, you can get to a point where you can keep breathing in and out through the nose during intense exercise. So this can raise the ceiling for athletic performance, for general overall health over the long run. It also promotes snoring, sleep apnea, and it weakens the diaphragm.
So if any of you... Oh, Stuntman jumped in. Hey, Stuntman. Welcome. We've been at it for a little while, but that's okay. What do you say? Late to the party. Late to the party, all good, man. Fashionably late, and better late than never, right? Yeah, so if any of you guys have issues with snoring, or maybe a partner who snores, not saying that Krista snores, and I've been told I don't snore, so that's good too. Yeah, then maybe some of these breathing techniques that we'll get into later will help with that.
So essentially, mouth breathing keeps you in that constant fight or flight response, stress response on the nervous system. It also bypasses that filtration of the nose as you breathe in. And you run the risk of overbreathing, hyperventilation, which can exacerbate asthma, lead to high blood pressure, heart disease, and other medical problems.
Quick aside, this hyperventilation as well is not to be confused with what we do in the Wim Hof Method. So it might seem contradictory, but it's not really, because the Wim Hof Method is a type of controlled hyperventilation. and intermittent hypoxia. So it's not exactly the same thing as if you were constantly breathing in and out through the mouth throughout the day and continually while you're sleeping as well. There are some experts on the breath and trainers even that to sort of reprogram that tendency to mouth breathe in your sleep, they say to tape your mouth closed, and then that'll force your body to breathe through the nose while you're sleeping. I first heard of that through a guy named Steve Maxwell. He's a popular personal trainer, and I caught him on Joe Rogan Experience a few times, and he was talking about that.
And that's like a practice within Buteyko as well.
Yeah.
Also, another thing is if you're not using your nasal passage for breathing, guess what? You use it or lose it, so you'll actually lose the ability to breathe through your nose. So then it essentially just causes a narrowing of the nasal passage. It dries out, breathing through your mouth kind of dries out the lungs. It causes cardiac arrhythmia and constricts blood vessels, and the health of every organ in the body it affects.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's on mouth breathing.
Correct. So we'll start to get into some of our breathing techniques now. We'll start with some pranayama techniques. So the first one, which you know from class and how we guide the breathing in class, is your ujjayi breath, which in Sanskrit translates to victory or conquest. It's used during our practice, and it's intended to be maintained throughout the practice. Using ujjayi breath, 3 or more full breaths like this helps to calm the nervous system, which can be very helpful for people with insomnia or who have trouble like falling asleep at night. And generally this is due to a overrun or overstimulated nervous system, which is a huge problem in our society today, just because of our sort of informational fast food digital system that we got going on, where we're constantly preoccupied with technology, tons of information, tons of stimulus constantly coming in, and we don't actually give ourselves that time to deliberately de-stimulate. So yeah, the ujjayi breath can also help to remove any built-up mucus from the throat. And it also helps to induce a meditation or meditative state through the influence that it has over our nervous system. Another one that I've played around with in class, not often, but sometimes once in a while, is the breath of fire, or what is known as Kapalabhati breathing. So this is a very energizing and very cleansing breath. This one also helps to push mucus out of the lungs. And it helps asthmatics create strong lungs and helps to alleviate that condition.
And if you guys...
You want to demonstrate dog breath? Or you had something, sorry, I interrupted.
If you guys want like an example of how you would practice this breath, or if you guys want to practice it now, maybe we can go through some of them and then maybe we can...
Yeah, did you guys want to try it?
Yeah.
Thumbs up in the chat if you want to try a quick little Kapalabhati. Keep an eye on that over there. We can still go through a few more of these.
Yeah, we'll keep going through them, and then if there's any ones that you want to see or want like more of a demonstration, or if you guys want to actually practice it, then let us know.
But generally with Kapalabhati, you want to take a breath in. You want to exhale to sort of neutral, so you're not like forcing all the air out of the lungs, but just a relaxed exhale. And then you want to use the muscles of the diaphragm, like a quick pull in and up of the diaphragm to forcefully exhale air. and then the inhale sort of takes care of itself naturally. So it would look and sound a little something like, and you can do it through the nose as well. Just one of the yoga studios that I used to practice at, we used to finish the classes with that, and it was always inhale through the nose, find your exhale, and then we do the breathing technique through the mouth. But you can do it through the nose, and it's equally effective.
And it's and doing it through the nose too can help if you have like any blocked nasal passages, which we'll kind of get into a little bit more through alternate nostril breathing.
Yeah.
So another kind of very energizing breath is our dog breath.
Which is exactly how it sounds, by the way.
So you essentially extend the tongue out as far as possible, and then you breathe through the contraction of the belly. And like any energizing breath, it can cause lightheadedness. So ideally, as soon as you feel that lightheadedness come on, you would pause, take a break, and then you would come back to it. The hammer breath. So the hammer breath is, again, very energizing. I kind of really liked this one in when I learned about it. It's kind of fun. So, do you want to demonstrate it?
Yeah, we can't really demonstrate it, but I'll demonstrate. I'll demonstrate a little bit. So basically, it goes like this. You have your hammer. I use this a lot when I'm roofing with my uncle. I do hammer breath quite a bit. No, I'm just kidding.
All jokes aside, though.
Yeah.
So essentially, you have your hands clasped over your head. You would do this one standing, and then essentially, as you would inhale here, and then exhale as you swing the arms between the legs, almost like a kettlebell swing. If you've ever done that.
Actually, we were kind of doing. I was kind of legitimately doing the hammer breath yesterday when we were working out across the street at the park. Because we were hitting the tire with a sledgehammer, so I was literally like, ha! Like exhaling forcefully as I was smashing that tire. Yeah.
And then on the exhale, you'd want to make a loud, like H sound.
Brandon likes my hammer.
So this breathing technique is usually done in 2 rounds. And it's followed by lung tapping. So you do the first round, and then lung tapping, and then the second round, and then lung tapping again.
What the heck is lung tapping?
So you would do what you need to do. You would do that 10 times, and then you come back up to standing, and then you would literally just like bringing your thumb and your fingers together, and you would literally just tap just anywhere where like along where your lungs are. And then so you do,
Flavio.
and then you would do that again.
Flavio likes Kapalabhati. Nice. Okay, after we go through these, maybe we can do a little Kapalabhati together if you'd like.
Yeah.
Like we'll actually guide it.
And then once you do that, you do the hammer breath again, and then you would finish with the lung tapping. And again, this helps to clear mucus. And it's good for people, again, who have asthma, and it also helps to strengthen the lungs. So our next one is alternate mouth and nose breathing. So this is...
It's intended to be used with a mudra.
Yes.
Mudra is just a fancy word for hand gesture.
Yeah, so essentially hands together, thumbs crossed.
Prayer hands is a mudra.
Yeah.
When they have you do the, index finger to thumb or whatever finger, that's a mudra. And then there's different, there's just different hand gestures that you can do in the yoga world.
Yeah. So this one, hands together, thumbs crossed at heart center. And then ideally you want to gaze at the tip of your nose. And what you would do is you breathe in and out through the nose and then in and out through the mouth. This, if you're familiar with Wim Hof, this is very similar to Wim Hof. Kinda. So
Wim isn't very strict on how you're bringing the air in.
Yeah.
So this one, as a practice, you're alternating inhales and exhales between your nose and your mouth. Wim Hof, he just says, get it in ya. He says, I don't care what hole you use, just get it in ya.
So essentially it would be like, so it's very forceful breaths, very powerful in and out. And ideally you want to practice this for about 11 minutes. I don't know why it's recommended 11, but again, this is one that you can tend to get very lightheaded with. So again, just take breaks if you need to, do a little pause, and then come back to it.
We also have alternate nostril breathing. So this one is you're breathing strictly through the nose. And the mudra attached generally is almost like the hang 10 or call me sign. And so you pinch your nose essentially between your thumb and your pinky finger. So because you're trying to breathe in through one nostril and out through the opposite nostril, in through the one nostril, out through the opposite nostril. So you're trying to breathe through each nostril independently. And we know, well, we speculate, I suppose, but it's said in the yogi texts, in the ancient texts, that if one nostril is blocked, it can lead to imbalance and dysfunction in the body. So to fix that, you can use breath of fire, which is Kapalabhati, through the blocked nostril to help open it up. But essentially, you would go breath in through the right side, out. You can go in through the right side, out through the right side, then in through the left, out through the left. Or you can alternate. So you would go in through the right, out through the left, in through the left, out through the right. And we also use this, we couple this with short breath retentions. So when I was doing this in my yoga teacher training, and the length of inhales and exhales, like the ratios can vary based on what works for you. But when we did it in my teacher training program, it was inhale for a count of 4, pinch the nose, hold for a count of 4, exhale opposite nostril for a count of 8, hold for a count of 4, and then repeat. Inhale through that opposite nostril for a count of 4, hold for 4, exhale for 8, hold for 4. This is an excellent practice if you're sick or if you have allergies. Alternate nostril breathing traditionally is used or is listed in the Vedic text as a method to help balance the body from an energetic standpoint. So the yogic texts describe energy channels within the body as the nadis. So these are subtle channels in our energetic body which conduct the flow of energy, or in yogic terms of prana, in other terms that's your chi or your Tao. And it's also known as meridians in traditional Chinese medicine and in acupuncture. So the two nadis, there are two main nadis. The one relating to the right nostril is called Pingala. The one relating to the left nostril is called Ida. So Pingala represents masculine energy, so it's hot, active energy, symbolically represented by the sun. And it plays upon the energy of the sympathetic nervous system. Airflow via the right nostril is also known to increase left brain activity. Now Ida is the opposite. So in this sort of duality existence that we live in, the Ida nadi relates to feminine energy or cool energy, passive energy, and symbolically it's represented by the moon, and it plays upon the parasympathetic. And this is very interesting too, because when you're in the sun, if you're in direct sunlight, it's hotter than when you're in shade. In the same way, when you are in direct moonlight, it's actually colder than if you were in moon shade. And that's literally true. Like, you could take a temperature gun outside in the middle of the night, and you can take the temperature of something that is in direct moonlight, and it will read colder than something that you're reading that is shaded from the moonlight. So that was an interesting little, mind fuck, pardon my language. So, coming back to the Ida nadi, airflow via the left nostril increases right brain activity. This concept is also represented by the yin-yang or yin-yang symbol of Eastern cultures. And this technique helps to bring the two opposite energies, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, into balance. There's also a third nadi, which travels along the spine energetically, and it's known as Sushumna, or also known as Kundalini. You want to take the next one?
So the next one is Durga. So this is very common in our yoga in both of our yoga classes. You've probably seen this many times, and it's essentially our 3-part breath. I think I also kind of mentioned it earlier too. But you focus on the breath as it travels in the belly, expands the ribs, and then to the chest, and then as it exits, the chest deflates first, then the ribs, then the belly. So it's essentially just becoming aware of proper breathing mechanics.
I guess in class then too, we low-key are sort of mixing Ujjayi breath with this Durga method. Next one is Virti. So you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, so the Virti is essentially ratio breathing with retention. So it's a 1-to-1 to 1-to-1 ratio. So you would inhale, let's say for the count of 4, and then hold for the count of 4, exhale for the count of 4, and then hold your breath at the bottom of the exhale for the count of 4. And this is really good with helping release any anxiety or stress. So for those maybe collapsed breathers, or for those frozen breathers, if any of those apply to you, that's a really great option to kind of practice. Even if I find, like, this is the one that I always go to if I'm like really stressed out, or if I'm feeling really like anxious, or kind of like in my head a little bit. I always come to this one, and this one like calms me right down. It's like, I really love this one. And then you can also play with the ratios a little bit too. If you want to make your exhales a little bit longer, that will help to influence the parasympathetic nervous system a little bit faster as well. And our next one is
Brahmari. Or humming bee.
Yes.
So this one is kind of funny. Makes you look silly. But essentially you use a mudra to cover your eyes, to plug your ears, and the way that I learned in my teacher training, we also plug the nose. So it's kind of like fingers over the eyes, thumbs in the ears, and then you can use your other fingers to plug the nose. And the idea is that you take an inhale, and on the exhale, you're exhaling through your mouth with your lips partially closed to make a soft vibration or humming sound inside your head. So it kind of sounds like the buzzing of a bee. This also helps to loosen mucus in the sinuses. It warms the vocal cords, but I've done this before when I've had sinus congestion, and it helps to open things up, at least temporarily, but it's a nice relief.
Or if you tend to get a lot of like sinus infections, it's really good to kind of keep doing this one to really keep things loose in the sinuses.
Keep things moving.
Yeah, and eventually everything will come out.
Might even be a good one to practice with if you guys do a self-care technique known as neti, or like the neti pot.
Yeah.
So the neti pot is a gentle way of sort of clearing out your sinuses. The way that I learned it at my yoga teacher training, we basically had a glass of water like filled to the top, and you basically just stick your nose in it and you just inhale the water. It's kind of like a saline solution. You're supposed to use room temperature filtered water, and then you add either a little bit of sea salt or Himalayan salt. You want to avoid table salt. That stuff is trash, pure garbage. And then how much salt you add is dependent on you guys. So obviously you don't want too much salt because then it's going to burn in there, but you want it to be just right. So we can do a little Kapalabhati if you want. Yeah, so I'll guide Krista. So essentially when you want to sit upright, so just like how you would be sitting upright with a nice tall spine, sitting on a yoga block or something of that nature, as you come in tune with your breathing, you just take a deep breath in and let it all out. Let it go. Take another deep breath in. This time you exhale halfway or to neutral, so you're not forcing air out. Mouth open, or Krista might do it through her nose. And you want to go forceful exhale. And you want to keep going like that. So her diaphragm is snapping in quickly to force the exhale. The inhale happens as the diaphragm pushes back out. So you don't actually have to think about inhaling. And you want to keep going as long as you can. And then on the last one, you exhale everything. And then you just come back to a normal breathing state. You can come back to the ratio breathing. You can come back to Ujjayi breath, just to help sort of calm that energy that you've built up. Other breathing techniques. So for our other breathing techniques, now we're going to get into some that aren't related to pranayama to finish off. And we've got some media, like a few videos and stuff to share with you guys. So let me get the memes out of here. Bring up the display capture. Okay, so never mind Bush's original baked beans. Never mind the baked beans for now. But so the Buteyko breathing method to start. Maybe I'll take baked beans off for now. The Buteyko breathing method to start is talked about in a book called The Oxygen Advantage by Patrick McKeown, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. McKeown. And so the video that we're going to pull up is an interview with him talking about it. But this breathing technique was developed by a Ukrainian or Russian medical scientist known as Dr. Konstantin Buteyko to normalize. So the intention of this practice is to normalize specific gas ratios within the lungs required for proper physiology. So that's proper ratio in your system of oxygen to carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide, as we said earlier, is not a waste gas, and your body's breathing reflex is not determined by how much oxygen or lack of oxygen is in the system, but it's dependent on how much CO2 is built up within the system. So it's actually your CO2 levels that indicate to your body when you need to breathe, which is why the mouth breathing thing and hyperventilation becomes a problem, because you're scrubbing CO2 from your system and your body is not going to get the signal to sort of uptake that oxygen. and your red blood cells will hang on to it. So it's essentially light, calm breathing through the nose, and it's used to retrain breathing volume, proper breathing volume, and to prevent or even reverse over-breathing, or to help reverse breathing. So hyperventilation is the CO2 deficit because you're scrubbing it from your system, which could lead to blood vessel spasm and oxygen deprivation. So your body struggles with that uptake of oxygen. This breathing method also plays upon the parasympathetic system. It helps to calm the nervous system. It helps to lower blood pressure, lower stress, and can help reverse breathing disorders. So like Krista was talking about it earlier, how it helps to reverse asthmatic conditions. So let me kill this music.
And we're gonna do kind of like separate videos on Buteyko and the Wim Hof Method, just because they're so large.
Oh yeah.
And it's a lot of information with those two.
Yes,
separately.
both the Buteyko method and the Wim Hof method can be like a deep dive stream in and of themselves.
Mm-hmm. And I think when we do those streams, like we'll actually run you guys through a practice of either Buteyko or Wim Hof or whatever, and we'll do like a full breathing practice with those.
Correct. Yes, we will.
Baked beans.
Do you like your baked beans? Let me know how the audio is with this.
You may actually be overbreathing, and it could be adversely affecting your health.
And here to explain is breathing expert and author Patrick McEwen. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're very
We're
welcome.
from Ireland
Thanks.
just today.
Yes,
We
thank you very
appreciate
much.
that. Well, tell us how incorrect breathing can affect our health.
Sure. It's mouth breathing, for example, is endemic, both in children and in adults, both during the day, also during sleep, and it pretty much wreaks havoc. The nose is responsible for about 30 functions in the human body. If you breathe through your mouth and if you breathe hard, there's less oxygen delivery to the cells. So you can influence your body oxygenation by breathing normally. And normal breathing is through the nose, light and quiet. And also how you breathe during the day impacts how you breathe.
I think he said light and quiet.
during
In case
the day.
there's a language
Let's
barrier.
talk about what causes overbreathing.
It's factors of modern living. People, they're not doing as much physical exercise as they should be. Stress, makes your breathing faster, more upper chest. You start taking more air in, and then the body develops a habit of breathing too much.
Well, how does one know if we're not breathing correctly? What kind of test can we?
Yeah, there's a breath hold test we use, which is part of what we do, and somebody who holds their breath after an exhalation. So if they breathe in through their nose, out through the nose, and they hold their nose, they should be able to hold their breath for about 30 seconds before the first urge is to breathe. Now, if somebody is less than 20, it definitely indicates overbreathing.
I just did it.
I love the 20. I love it that you're
Yes.
talking to me now and are really trying to do our breathing. Well, can we talk about snoring and
Yeah.
Well, I
sleep
can
apnea
even,
and what
Yes.
causes
If you think what is snoring, it's the exchange of a large volume through a narrow space. People who snore breathe hard. So what we want to do is we want to open up the nose, but we also want to bring down breathing volume. So there's breathing re-education, simple exercises that you practice during the day, and that helps reset the breathing center in the brain, and then your breathing is lighter during sleep.
Really?
And then opening up the nose, there are nasal dilators.
Thumbs up in the chat if the volume is okay.
For example, mute snoring, that are there. If you look at my nostrils, they're symmetrical, and they're different sizes. So I need to open up the airways. So there's little products you can use that you open up, you insert them into the nose, they open up the nose, and they make breathing easier. So it's a
Interesting.
combination of both that helps reduce snoring.
It's not like
I think he's talking about those breathing strips that you can put over your nose.
Those things are awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
temporary, right?
Also, glad you're enjoying the stream and enjoying the information. Yeah. And we'll get into a little bit more. I've got some other little videos to share with you guys, testimonials from people pertaining to the Wim Hof method, but just goes to exemplify like how powerful something that's so simple can actually be.
put them up and you go to sleep and take them out, or?
Yeah, no, they're used during your sleep and then you take them out during the day. So it's not, and it's really, I have to emphasize is the importance of nose breathing during sleep. If you have your mouth open, you're twice as likely to have sleep problems, including snoring and sleep apnea.
Let's talk about this Buteyko, because I don't want to run out of time. This is a book you wrote, Sleep with Buteyko.
Yes.
And that's a technique that people can learn.
Yeah, it was a Russian doctor who discovered it, and he looked at the concept of breathing, and he says many people overbreathe. Let's bring their breathing volume down towards normal. And this is getting huge amount of attention now. Stanford Medical School, their sleep school, is now doing research on breathing re-education with the Academy of Myofunctional Sciences here in Los Angeles. And there's orthodontists here in Los Angeles. There's a great amount of information coming out. Dr. William Hang, I've just came back from in the Orgora Hills, always talking about airway, always talking about mouth closed, and they understand the importance of nose breathing. So Los Angeles, the reason I'm here is because there's a huge interest in the field of nose breathing and breathing through the nose, and we have to get the information out there. I think it's very important.
Well, I love this book, Sleep with Buteyko, and it's you can change it in 7 days if you study it correctly.
If you have your mouth open, you're likely to have a poor night's sleep. We have to get the mouth closed. And as Dr. Christian Guilleminault, who's also based here, the founding father of sleep medicine, he said we must teach our children to breathe through their noses, and we must teach our adults as well.
That's incredible. Wow.
Supposedly Ellen and I every now and snore, allegedly. Allegedly. So we'll like try to see if we can.
Yes, thank you
change
so
our
much
life
for
around.
joining us, Patrick. It's really nice to have you here. Check out his book, Sleep with Buteyko, and I'm sure you can find it on Amazon. There's also a DVD in here you can listen to. And
yes.
All right.
That's fantastic.
It is so
Very
interesting.
Well, welcome, and thank you so much.
Yeah, so I'm gonna pause that. Another interesting thing about the Buteyko method is that it can be used to simulate high altitude training, which is pretty fascinating. Just by the way that you kind of play around with your inhales and exhales, you can and like your ratios of inhale to exhale with your breath holds, you can simulate how it would be to train or to live at higher altitudes. I'm gonna try to fix the audio thing quick. Oh, I guess display capture doesn't have it. Never mind. Okay, so our next breathing technique we'll finish with is the Iceman's, the Wim Hof Method. So the Wim Hof Method is actually based, excuse me, based in a breathing technique known as Tumo. So again, when I was at my yoga teacher training, my teacher told us this story, and it was more not relating to a breathing technique, but more relating to the power of meditation. And she said that in India or even Tibet, when the Buddhist monks would meditate, or I guess it would be like almost like a test for them. She said that as a test to see which of the monks was quote unquote realized, as a test they would send these monks up into the mountains with blankets. So what they would do is they would sit them in the snow, they would wet the blankets, and they would drape the wet blankets over top of them, of the monks, and they would leave them there overnight. And she said that the monks who were realized, when they would come back the next morning to check on these guys, that they would have been able to dry those blankets just using their internal body heat. And I didn't know it at the time, but they were using that Tumo breathing method, which is what the Wim Hof method is based off of. And also speaks to why his method or his website is called Inner Fire, because you're using your breathing and the cold exposure to train your internal system to ramp up its metabolism to be able to generate internal body heat to withstand the cold. And so with Wim Hof, they started, when he first came on the scene, everything that he was claiming was pretty much hearsay, because he was performing all these wild stunts and getting a lot of notoriety for it, but there wasn't any real science to support what it was he was saying. So once he became popular and started linking up with universities in the Netherlands, in Holland, which is where he's from, and even here in the West, in America now, they're starting to study him, they're starting to study his method, and they're starting to see that everything that he was claiming is being substantiated, it's being validated. So he's actually being vindicated to a degree. So the one was that they actually were able to measure brown fat tissue in Wim Hof versus a control. And they were able to measure that he has more brown fat adipose tissue or brown adipose tissue than a normal human being. So your brown fat tissue essentially is tissue, it's fat tissue that runs along your spine to the back of your neck, the base of the skull, and across the shoulder blades. So when we're infants, when we're first born, we don't have developed muscle systems. So infants or babies will rely on their brown fat tissue metabolizing their white fat tissue or their baby fat to generate body heat, because as adults we use like muscle contraction and shivering and these types of things to generate internal heat. Babies don't have those muscle systems developed fully, so they rely on that brown fat tissue. But so that brown fat tissue kind of goes away. Krista mentioned earlier, use it or lose it. Because we develop full muscle systems, our body starts to utilize that instead of brown fat tissue to generate internal body heat. But you can teach your body, or your body will adapt to certain stimulus to regrow some of that brown fat tissue, which is interesting. Some other benefits of the Wim Hof method, aside from the brown fat tissue stuff. Oh, and another side note about the brown fat tissue is that it's actually effective for burning fat, for weight loss, because when you reteach your body how to ramp up its metabolism to utilize fat deposits to generate body heat, well, your body's eating away of that excess, fatty tissue, and people notice benefits in weight loss. Another benefit is that you can influence your immune system, and that was another study that was done with Wim, where when they tested him and 30 other people who were trained in his method versus the control group, which didn't do any breathing exercise, they found that 30 minutes after the breathing exercise, there was a measurable increase in white blood cell production, in leukocytes and lymphocytes. So they had a measurable increase in white blood cell count 30 minutes after doing the breathing technique. Wim Hof has also demonstrated that he can influence his endocrine system and his hormone production. He can influence his vascular system as well. And even with sitting in an ice bath, he can maintain his core body temperature or even raise it a little bit if it starts to dip, which is mind-blowing. It's fascinating. It can also it also helps with autoimmune disorders. So because you can influence your immune system, that was the other part of that study, was that he was able to down-regulate the inflammatory markers of his immune system, his immune response. So a lot of people who deal with autoimmune illnesses do very, very well at managing their symptoms using his method, where they can do so without having to rely on their medication that they normally would be taking. So we got a couple of testimonial vids. This first one, well, let me pull it up. This first one deals with a Canadian lady. Her name is Rula. Pull this up. Boom.
Can you start? Hi, my name is Rula. I'm 60 years old. I have Lyme disease, and it's hard at times.
I'll pause this quick. Let me know how the audio is, how the volume is for this one as well.
Start the day and to do things as it causes confusion in my brain. I'm a writer, and this means that I have to have a lot of focus. And having Lyme disease, it's very, very hard to do that, because Lyme gets into the brain and then it's like mushy and cloudy and frustrating and very, very tiring. Before starting this course, I was so sick, I couldn't take the plane to come over. My son said to me, he said, "Mom, you're so ill, please cancel, stay at home." And I said, "No." And I came, and I'm doing it. It's been hard, it takes longer times for me because I am not very well, but I feel every time I do a breathing or a cold shower, even if it's like a 30-second cold shower, I feel better. So it's pushed me to continue. It's given me such good feelings in moments where I was not feeling well. What I find is that by each week in the course, like from the week when I started, it was like an illumination. I had a lot of fears of, oh, I'm not going to be up to it. Maybe I can't do the whole episode. Maybe I cannot hold my breath for this much time. But what I did, and helped me a lot, was that, okay, I don't compare myself to anybody. I just step on and I just do whatever I can. So while everybody in the episode were doing their thing, if they breathe like very deep and whatever, and I could not do that, I just went my own thing. And this helped me a lot. We don't need to take it to the extremes. Like applying.
It's going a little faster because I sped up the playback speed just to try and avoid copyright strikes from YouTube. Also interesting too that when you do the Wim Hof method, like if you do his online course, all of his breathing techniques and stuff afterwards are followed up by a few different yoga poses and stretches and that sort of a thing. Because interestingly enough about Wim Hof is that he started off as a yoga instructor. So it's interesting that he still incorporates that into his method.
One bit or the other bit is helpful for all of us. I'm a proof. Just doing the little things, the little push-ups, the little plank, and just moving my body in a way that keeps it flexible. I feel Wim Hof Method has given me the strength to just go forward and to say, no, I'm not just Lyme. I'm not just a 60-year-old. Age doesn't exist. Yes, the body goes a bit and it has its rigidity, but it's not that. I feel just like hopping under a cold shower when I open my eyes in the morning. Just give me this move. Yes, it's true, and I can go on. It's a life experience that goes on and on and on, and I will not stop. I will not stop. Because I have seen what it has done to me. This builds confidence. It has built confidence in me. Taking a cold shower has built confidence in me. It has given me the feeling that I am unbreakable. This is my invitation to all of you out there who are looking at this and watching this. Just allow yourself to be who you are, to be the strength and the power that you are, because you are strong inside. So go for it. That would be what I would say. Enjoy, have fun.
Yeah, so actually pretty amazing that it can be used to help manage symptoms of Lyme. I remember when I used to teach classes at the Good Life Club in Niagara Falls, I had one lady that was coming to my class who had been dealing with Lyme disease for like 2 years, and coming to yoga classes, like it was like the first physical exercise that she was able to do. Yeah, when I remember when she first came to me, she was advising me against hands-on adjustments for her. because she said that even the slightest little touch, even if it's just 2 fingers or 1 finger, just like a little touch or a little poke, would be immensely painful for her, which is crazy. So, of course, me being the person that I am, I dug into this Wim Hof information, and I sent her this video. So I hope she's been practicing it, or that she's been able to find some benefit with it. This next one is very, very interesting as well. A gentleman dealing with Guillain-Barré syndrome, if I'm pronouncing that right.
My name's Doug Steiny, and I'm here at the Wim Hof.
Yeah.
Sorry, is this stream frozen for anyone?
Yeah, let us know if the
Just because
stream is frozen.
It's frozen on my end here, and I just want to make sure it's not for anyone else.
Oh, it doesn't look like it.
No, it's like glitching now.
Oh, probably because I'm playing these videos and my computer can't handle it.
Yeah, but mine, like, when I'm watching, it's glitching.
Yeah, it's because of us on our end
Okay.
that it's glitching for them. But it's all right. We'll get through these little videos quick, and then we'll wrap it up for you guys because we've been going for quite a while now.
Workshop in San Francisco. I wanted to share my story on how I got here.
Get the sauce ready.
And in 2014, I was going through a very difficult time at home. My wife had cancer, and it was a very stressful situation. So, unbeknownst to me, that had took a big toll on my immune system, a lot of stress. My son, at that time, brought home whooping cough. Now, whooping cough in and of itself isn't such a big deal, but if my wife got it, it would be a big deal. So we had to sort of quarantine her, and then I got to cough for 3 months. So the compromised immune system and the whooping cough were a train wreck. Through a series of events, a friend of mine who was a doctor said, you're not looking that good, Doug, and insisted that I go to the hospital to get checked. That was at 5 o'clock on a Friday evening, and I remember it well. As you can imagine, by 5 o'clock the next morning, I was completely paralyzed. I had an autoimmune disorder called Guillain-Barré, which eats the myelin sheath off your nerves, and it's like MS. It starts in your feet, goes up your legs, gets to your shuts them off and you die, or you're in for a long haul. My diagnosis was a 50-50 chance of permanent paralysis, and the recovery is 18 to 24 months. That's the best thing that can happen, and there's no cure. So I'm laying in this hospital bed, paralyzed. A couple days later, they let my 11-year-old daughter come in. And that's when I really feel like the journey began, because, of course, she was terribly frightened. Big tears in her eyes, and she said, oh my God, Daddy, are you going to be okay? And I said, yeah, honey, your daddy's going to be okay. And then she said, but Daddy, you have to promise me, because I know you'll never break a promise. And I did. And I promised her. And from that second on, I knew that I was going to be okay. I never questioned it. I was never worried for a half a second. I didn't think I was going to float out of there. And I knew I was in for a long haul, but I knew what was going to be on the other end of it. So I was up for the fight. So after about a month, they sent me home. There's nothing you can do. And it's really difficult at home. And my wife was finished with her chemo, but it's just not pretty. 15 years.
Sorry about these videos. It's my laptop. My laptop's exposed. It's low processing power. But we're looking at upgrading our systems to make streaming like this with like using display captures or screen shares run a little bit more smoothly.
Old son, watching his dad wobble around like, can't walk. About 4 months later, he comes bouncing out of his room one time, and he says, Dad, there's this guy. He does all this stuff, and his immune system's so strong he can't get sick. And I know that's not true exactly, but that's how he interpreted it. But what he's saying is, Dad, you've got an immune system problem with it, and if you do all this stuff, you might get better, and I want you to get better. That's the way I took it. And he said, can you do that, Dad? And I said, you bet I can, son. Now, I didn't know what I was saying I was okay to. By the next day, I had the 10-week course, and I've done everything exactly like that every day. And within 8 months total, I was completely symptom-free. My strength and my flexibility is just ridiculous. I look at it in awe, as if it's somebody else. But at 64 years old, I swim 2 miles in the ocean 3 times a week. I can do the splits. I deadlift 300 pounds. I mean, this is just like I have no inflammation in my body, ridiculous amount of energy. I do sound a little bit evangelical about the Wim Hof Method, though, I gotta admit. but you really, really need to stimulate and stress your autonomic nervous system to be healthy. So go do it. Healthy, happy, and strong.
Nice. Okay. Okay, so apparently my computer is, needs an upgrade. So there was another couple videos that I wanted to share as well. One was a testimonial from somebody who had multiple sclerosis. And since she started doing the Wim Hof method, she's been able to wean off of her regular medication, and she's been able to get back at playing the violin. That's what she used to do, is like a passion and a hobby, and it just allows her to be able to live functionally day to day. And then the other video, and maybe we can even get into these when we touch on the Wim Hof method specifically. But another one was interesting because it dealt with a lady who had suffered a bad burn. She was at a restaurant and somebody spilled hot coffee all over her back, and she had really bad first and second degree burns there. And by practicing the Wim Hof method and getting into the cold showers and eventually the cold baths, she was able to heal that up in no time, to where her doctor was like in disbelief at how quickly her body was recovering and regenerating that skin tissue. And she said that afterwards, after it fully healed, she's like, now there's like, you can't even really notice it. You can't even really notice any scarring or anything like that. And I know that too from personal experience, because I think it was maybe like 2 years ago, on New Year's Day, we were practicing the Wim Hof method, and I had drawn a bath, hot bath, and to make it a little bit hotter, because I don't know, I guess it's just my personality. I'm an extremist, shall we say. I decided to boil a pot of hot water as well to add to the bath. So what we were going to do was, after the Wim Hof method, we were going to go outside into the snow, and then when we need to, jump into the hot bath. But long story short, I ended up spilling this boiling hot water all over my right side, like my hip, my knee and thigh, and I also had a pretty bad burn from that. And while Krista was playing nurse and helping me treat the burn, I was doing the breathing method, and it really, really helped to manage the intense pain from it. And then as it was healing, now, same thing with me, like it healed up relatively quickly. And I also don't have any noticeable scarring from it anymore, which is pretty cool. To wrap this up for the breath, because it's all about, it's all about just sort of demonstrating the power of the breath and the importance of proper breathing for our health and for good oxygenation. I wanted to share with you another video, just a quick little clip. Now this one comes from a lady named Amanda Vollmer. She runs a YouTube channel, and she also has like a little storefront that deals in like homeopathic remedies. She's a naturopath, or she's not technically a naturopath because she's not licensed, but she has her naturopathic degree. She has other credentials, university degrees in what did she say? Agricultural biotech. So she's done like lab work in terms of genetically sort of manipulating cell lines and that sort of thing using like CRISPR type technology. So she has experience in the lab with that, and then she went naturopathic way. So her little store sells all kinds of natural products, from like shampoos to soaps to deodorants to skin creams to tea blends that are intended to be like homeopathic remedies, all that kind of stuff. And in one of her recent videos, she was talking about a patent for chlorine dioxide, or MMS, which is known to be a very, very powerful oxidizer. Oftentimes it's used to treat water to make tainted water drinkable and potable. Excuse me. And she was just going over this patent, and at a certain point in it, she was talking about how the researchers understood the importance of proper oxygenation. So I'll just let her take it away, and I'll play it at a normal speed since we're not playing much of it. And I'll try to turn it up. And I'll leave it the screen as is. I hope that it goes. Come on. Hold on. Okay,
good. Conditions for treating limited parts of the body has shown some success in mainstream medical research. Another alternative theory approach involved hydrogen peroxide and also chlorine dioxide taken by mouth or injected into approach oxygen to flu. In 1920, peroxide injections
was that it?
Effects of poisonous gas. In the 1920, peroxide injections were used on.
No, that's not it either.
The mid-1800s.
Sorry, guys. I thought I had this queued up.
Specific to one type of tumor, as is the case with. In any case, because of Intune's, as well as all other percutaneous strategies, percutaneous means under the skin. In any case, because of Intune's, that's chlorine dioxide, relatively low toxicity, liver tumors larger than 3 centimeters might be treated with. The history of putting oxygen-releasing substances into the body follows several tracks. Interest in ozone dates back to the mid-1800s in Germany, where it was claimed to purify the blood. One of the earliest accounts of the medical use of hydrogen peroxide was a short article in 1888 in the Journal of the American Medical Association. A physician described a case where peroxide was useful in removing dust from the nose and throat of a child with diphtheria.
Do you remember the timestamp that I had?
Using peroxide for cancer of the womb as a cleanser, deodorizer, and stimulator of healing. During World War I, doctors used ozone to treat wounds, trench foot, and the effects of poisonous gas.
Oh, yeah.
In the 1920s, ozone and peroxide injections were used experimentally to treat the flu. In 1920, peroxide injections were used on patients during an epidemic of viral pneumonia. Alternative medicine practitioners claim that cancer cells thrive in low oxygen environments, and adding oxygen to the body creates an oxygen-rich condition in which cancer cells cannot survive. Use of ozone or oxygen in small amounts under controlled conditions for treating limited parts of the body has shown some success in mainstream medical research.
That was it. So that was basically it. Just that little clip about how researchers were talking about or understood how cancer cells thrive in low oxygen environments. So anything relating to your breathing, where you can bring more oxygen into your system, oxygenate your blood, and through that, all of your cells, the more beneficial the environment that you're creating internally. So I guess it's very beneficial as a preventative sort of health measure.
We have Flavio said, curious about Wim Hof. We'll search more.
Yes. Some of the testimonial videos that we were sharing with you guys, I'll link in the description so that you can actually watch them in the description of this video, so you can watch it without it sort of freezing up on you and that kind of stuff. We also had Use iodine, don't use MMS. Yes, actually, there's another video from a guy named Dr. Darren Schmidt on YouTube. He works at the Nutritional Healing Center in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and he played an amazing video of a gentleman who had dealt with very, very bad, what was it, strep or staph infection that caused necrosis of his tissues. So it almost looked like he had frostbite on his fingers and on his feet, and even his face, like his nose, where when he was in the hospital, I think this guy was from Australia, when he was in the hospital, doctors were telling them that they would have to amputate his much of his hands, much of his feet, and his nose. And I think he was officially pronounced dead for a little while, and they revived him. He said that he took one course of antibiotics from the hospital, and then he refused all their the food that the hospital would provide, and he went back to just eating a carnivore diet, where he was just eating beef, organ meats, and congealed blood, but he was supplementing iodine and selenium, and his body actually started healing that necrotic tissue from the inside out. That he said every time he would hit the shower and the warm water would soften the skin, he'd be able to peel off a little bit more of that dead tissue little by little, and he actually was able to avoid any amputation, which is crazy, just through diet and letting the body regenerate and heal itself naturally, which is, I don't know, absolutely fascinating to me. But speaking to MMS, I actually used or had the chance to use MMS myself personally when I was at my yoga teacher training. This guy I was rooming with was Canadian. His name was Kyle. And he had his own little organic farm, just like an acre farm, somewhere in the country between Montreal and Ottawa. And he had it, so he would let me try it, and it was MMS with citric acid as the activator, and I actually found it worked very, very well for me. It wasn't anything detrimental, and it actually cleared me right out. Without going too in detail into it, might be a little bit TMI, but I noticed it in my stool. It was crazy. And then he gave me a little bit to bring home with me, so I got to continue taking it. I think it lasted me maybe 2 or 3 months from when I got home from my teacher training. So it's actually quite effective, and I also find that it's interesting that it's patented in its use as a cancer treatment, as a cancer cure. So, make of that what you will. But it's not like a bad thing or anything like that. I know from personal experience. So, just saying. What else we got? Dino says, I suspect the reason why people have success with MMS is because the chlorine is displacing the fluorine and bromine. Iodine does the same thing, but it's a necessary nutrient. Oh, interesting. Not sure about the oxygen angle. Well, it is I know that chlorine dioxide is a powerful oxidizer, which is why I probably had the experience of it flushing my system out. But yeah, iodine is huge. Selenium is huge. There's all kinds of information out there about the power of proper diet and nutrition and supplementation to really put your body in the best position to heal itself. As we know, our bodies regenerate tissue constantly. There's no reason to think why our immune or defense systems would work any differently.
Dino says an old treatment for cancer is to open the patient and paint the tumor with the iodine.
Oh, interesting.
That's interesting. interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for getting that chat going, buddy. Yeah, and maybe that'll be a stream for a later date. We can get into supplementation information and nutritional information. But for this one, especially relevant to the times, I guess, you know, like we're dealing with mass hysteria over a respiratory illness. If you can have the like solid breathing practices and breathing mechanics and different breathing techniques in your back pocket, well, now you're ahead of the game. In terms of
your lungs,
strengthen your lungs in terms of being able to prevent illness or even just to mitigate severity of illness should you start to display symptoms. And I find that this type of information also goes a lot further in terms of empowering people to be able to take control of their own health and well-being instead of relying on, absurd guidelines like wash your hands and, use cancer-causing hand sanitizing chemicals to destroy all the natural bacteria that's on your skin. We need these bacteria to live. We understand this in terms of nutrition with our, our gut flora and having good, healthy gut bacteria. Your skin carries different bacteria as well. And so your germs are your helpers. They're not like anything to be afraid of or to go to war against. And like, the other one of wearing masks for respiratory illness is, to me, absolutely nonsensical. Personally, if it's a respiratory illness, why would you want to wear something on your face that restricts airflow, restricts oxygen coming into your system, where you're essentially just huffing on your own exhaust fumes all day long? Like,
and
that makes no sense.
Huge, like that whole space, like wearing a mask, it's a breeding ground for a lot of like bacteria and fungus and all that kind of stuff. Like I have to wear one at work and we get one mask for 8 hours, and by the end of the day it's like you can, like I feel like I'm getting sick by the end of the day just because I actually can't take a deep breath in. And it's crazy.
Yeah, so that's all we had for you guys tonight. We've been going for 2 hours. Krista didn't think that we'd be able to fill the time, and she's like, well, maybe we should do different ones, different streams, or do them a little bit shorter. But it's not hard to fill an hour and a half, 2 hours, when we're discussing these types of things, especially when the chat is going as well. When you guys are sort of talking amongst each other in the chat and bringing up different things in the chat. I was hoping some of my yogi instructor friends would pop in the chat, since they've got some good insights on breathing techniques and stuff, but I didn't see anyone, unfortunately. I wasn't paying attention to the chat too much, but yeah. Awesome. Yeah, so maybe that's something we can look into later on. Linda is like a nutritional stream. My aunt does, my Zia Shira does nutritional stuff. Maybe I can even reach out to her and ask her if she'd like to come on as like a guest to talk about nutritional stuff. That'd be pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Dino says, I'm really interested to do and learn more about the Wim Hof from someone who knows. I tried watching the videos. A fantasy of mine is when I'm done with an existing claim that I'll have the time and money to learn this stuff firsthand from someone who knows, not from YouTube. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, in passing, actually, what I've been doing lately is using the app. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, probiotic washes for surface infections instead of antibiotics. Batman wore a mask, though. So did, what was it, Princess Bride?
Yeah, but Batman's mask didn't cover his
mouth, that's right. Batman was gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Maybe. You know. Actually, what's crazy too is the whole legend of Batman goes back to like ancient cultures too. That's another deep dive for another day maybe. But who else wore a mask? Oh, all the Lucha Libre wrestler guys wear masks. Dr. Doom wore a mask. He lives in a cave, hangs out with prepubescent males, has a lot of money, and no children. Classic. I love it. That's so funny. That's a great joke. But yeah, getting back to Wim Hof, I've been using the app, Dino. So you can go on the App Store. The app is free to use, but it actually will guide your breathing. But only a rumor started by Robin. Yeah. Just a rumor, you guys. That's so funny. Awesome. See, this is what the chat's all about right here. But anyways, yeah, the breathing app is great because it guides your breathing for you. It counts the number of breaths for you. And then when you do your breath hold, it actually records your times for you. So you can keep track of your progress and that kind of stuff. You know, not to pump my own tires or anything. Not trying to gas myself up, but I was doing, just before the stream, I was laying outside in the sun today doing the breathing method. And these were my breath retention times, if you guys can see them. Can you see them? Oh, no, never mind. Or maybe if I turn it down. There we go, that's better. I don't know if you guys can see the breath retention times. Not bad? So, you know, that's, I don't know, that's crazy. When I first started doing it, I would generally be between like 1.5 minutes to 2.5 minutes tops. And now, you know, 3 years on, the more consistent I am with it, I'm pretty consistent into hitting that 3-minute mark and beyond. Where now, if I do 4 to 5 rounds of breathing, I'm starting to scratch the surface of that 4-minute mark. So there's some huge changes that happen within your body practicing these different breathing techniques. Mm-hmm. You have anything else that you'd like to add? No? But so I guess we can cut it off there. Again, thanks so much, you guys, for hanging out.
Thanks for coming by.
Yeah, thanks for coming by and hanging out with us and in you know, engaging with one another in the chat and stuff.
Our next.
Sorry.
So our next live stream will be a beginner yoga class, and then followed by like an upper body mobility class.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So we got a couple in our back pocket, so we'll probably stream the Krista's class again on Friday. We'll probably do a 6 p.m. stream again. And yeah, that's about it. So again, we'd like to say thank you. Thanks to all of you for coming out. Any links and whatever that we are sharing here, we'll put in the video description, so you guys can check them out on your own if you want to dig more into it. If anybody wants as well, because I did the workshop and the online course, I actually have some PDF documents of the basic method and how to do it. Another PDF document of the science behind it and like what's happening within your body physiologically when you practice the method. And a third PDF document that is a ebook called Becoming the Iceman. So if anybody wants these, let me know. You can reach out in the comments, or if you're following us on social media, feel free to drop us a message in the DMs. And I can link up those PDFs in an email and send them off to you guys for your own reading. I'd be more than happy to do that for you guys.
If you have any comments or questions or anything like that, if you want us to do like a stream where we just run through a breathing practice with you or something like that you kind of went over today, let us know. But we definitely will be going into more detail with Buteyko and Wim Hof.
Yeah, we'll do some deep dives on those. So, yeah, thanks again for coming out. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for chatting, and thank you for supporting us, supporting the stream. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe, as it helps us to get more reach and a little bit more influence over those YouTube algorithms. And any donations, we'll put the PayPal in the chat, and it'll also be in the video description as well. So, of course, any donations are never obligated, but we always appreciate your support, you guys. So, and actually, wanted to thank everyone for donations that have come in, because it allowed us to get a new camera so that we can film better quality videos. And we're also trying to save up some of these donations as well, so we can improve our streaming system, to improve or upgrade the computer or the laptop, so that when we do stream and we're sharing media and stuff like that, it's not going to glitch, it's not going to freeze up, it'll be able to run smoothly, and we'll just be able to